Now, I'll confess, in the early portion of the 2015 season, I thought the Houston Texans were done, cooked, stick a fork in them, fucking over. The 2014 season was a mirage. Here was the reality. Bill O'Brien maybe should be fired at the end of the season. And mercifully for many Texans fans, probably General Manager Rick Smith would finally be shown the door after 10 seasons. Well, funny thing happened along the way. Houston Texans, after going 1-4 and then actually being at 2-5, 7 games into the season, they pulled their heads out of their collective asses. And they decided they were going to play some foosball, damn it. And they're going to start winning them some games. And over the last 9 games of the season, they went 7-2. I'll give credit where credit's due. Second straight winning season under Bill O'Brien. Another 9-7 record. This time it was good enough to win the AFC South. Get a playoff game. Get a home playoff game at that. What happened once you got that home playoff game? Woo! Yikes. We'll talk about that in a moment. But you got there. And any chance, any opportunity you have to establish that you're a threat in the future to the Indianapolis Colts and the other teams in that division, and you can sneak a division title out like this, is a good thing for the program, so to speak. It's a good thing for the organization. And it is progress, and it's something to build on for the future. And frankly, there are plenty of good things about this season for the Texans. A lot of things went well after that horrendous start. Like I said, at the end of the day, they got it done. They won the division. Doesn't matter whether you went 15-1 or 9-7. You win your division, you get into the playoffs, all the same. And the Texans did enough in that division to handle enough business to be able to make it. And they did. And good for them. And now in terms of some individual stars for this season, you got to look at J.J. Watt and his 17.5 sacks. But, you know, with J.J. Watt, it's not just about the sacks, but it's scary how many sacks he can put up, considering how consistently he's double and triple teamed. But here is, you know, arguably the best player in the National Football League, certainly arguably the best defensive player in the National Football League. And just another dominant force of a season. I mean, this guy's on the fast path to Canton. And frankly, if he never played another down in the National Football League, even after 5 years, he's been so dominant and so good out of the gate from day one that he probably already would have a first ballot spot in Canton. And I really mean that if you think about that. But you got to look at another guy, DeAndre Hopkins, on the offensive side of the ball. My goodness. I mean, your first-round pick from 2013, you're wondering with Andre Johnson being shown the door, is DeAndre Hopkins, is Nuke going to get a little exposed over there, being asked to take up the #1 wide receiver spot? He didn't. He was a beast, man, a beast. Over 110 catches. I think he had like 111 catches, over 1,500 receiving yards, 11 touchdowns, which when you look at the fact that this was an offense that lacked Arian Foster for most of the season, really didn't have a viable, credible #2 option opposite of DeAndre Hopkins at wide receiver, and had really nothing to speak of as a tight end. You know, what Hopkins did with the amount of defensive attention that he got was pretty incredible, especially with the uncertainty at the quarterback position. You know, it was a monster year, and you could talk about, well, they had to throw the ball to somebody, but that doesn't mean the people throwing the ball were very good, and it doesn't mean that he wasn't being double and triple teamed a lot. I mean, that dude had a monster freaking season. A monster season. It makes the Texans look a lot better from moving on from Andre Johnson, especially seeing what he did once he went to the Indianapolis Colts. But another guy that I thought really did a good job for them was Whitney Mercilus. They'd given him some money, and, you know, here's a guy that came out, had 12 sacks. You know, to me, in a lot of ways, he's supposed to be what Clowney's supposed to be. You know, it's Whitney Mercilus, the first-round pick from 2012, that's sitting there and having a double-digit sack season, not Jadeveon Clowney. Imagine if they ever actually got anything out of Jadeveon Clowney. Imagine what that could represent for this defense going forward. That could potentially be scary, but would-have, could-haves, and should-haves. And as a friend used to tell me, if ifs and buts were candies and nuts, it'd be Christmas every day. Well, it's not. Period. What else went well, though? This is a team that went 5-1 in the division. Now, if you go 5-1 in your division, it'd probably be a crime if you didn't ultimately end up the division champions at the end of the year. 5-1, you've handled your business, you've got yourself on the right path to making the playoffs. They had some other quality victories during the course of the season. They beat a 10-win New York Jets team. They beat a 12-win Cincinnati Bengals team in an ugly yet still dominant defensive performance. You're also talking about defensively, a team that finished top 10 in the league in points allowed, top 3 in the league in total yards allowed, and top 5 in the league in sacks. So this was a team that was really good on generating a lot of pressure on opposing quarterback. They're really hard to move the ball on. They were hard to score points on. You got that type of formula, it can really make it a lot easier to envision how this team could make the playoffs. But then we look at the other side of the coin, and even with the fact they finished with another winning record for the second year in a row under Bill O'Brien, they made the playoffs this year, won the division title. They still had some problems. I mean, again, you're talking about a team that was 1-4 and then 2-5 to start the season. Those bad, horrible, shitty blowout losses to Atlanta and Miami. Most other teams should have been done at that point. And for all intents and purposes, this team was dead to rights, and they maybe should have been done. You throw in another loss to Buffalo. It wasn't, a blowout loss. I think it was like 30-21. But again, that type of loss right there kept you from going 10-6. That's the type of team that you needed to beat because you were better than the Buffalo Bills, and you shouldn't be losing to them. So there were some definite missed opportunities. Teams that they were better than, teams that they should have beaten. Atlanta and Miami, two teams Texans were better than, and they got blown out by both of those jokers. And then the Bills, they were better than too. The reason I bring this up is imagine if they win 2 of those games. You're talking about an 11-win team. You talk about if you win 3 of those games, you're a 12-win team. Not only are you a 12-win team, you'd have the tiebreaker over Cincinnati. You would end up going ahead and getting the 3rd seed in the playoffs. And who knows? Who knows? But what else didn't look good for this team? Obviously, that playoff loss. And I tweeted about it during the playoff game. I'm like, I really think Bill O'Brien should be fired after this. And I know a lot of people jumped on my throat for saying, what the hell are you talking about? He did a great job getting into the playoffs. The 2nd straight winning season. Yeah, all that's true. But you went into that game and you kept sticking with Brian Hoyer, clearly knowing he was playing horribly, clearly knowing he was overwhelmed, clearly knowing this guy was in no way, shape, or form going to ever get you in a position where you could even be close to winning the game. At some point in time, you have to sit there and say, F this, enough's enough. We got to try somebody else. At that point in time, as bad as Hoyer was in that wild card game, as bad as he was, it's not giving up. It's actually trying to win. And by sticking with Hoyer and being so stubborn with Hoyer throughout the entire game, in my opinion, it felt like Bill O'Brien had given up. And he was just like, fuck it, it doesn't matter what I do. And is that the type of mentality you really want? And furthermore, if you've got a guy that really thought a Brian Hoyer that was playing that poorly in such an important game was the best option that you had at quarterback, whether it was even true or not, doesn't matter. Is that the type of guy with the right type of football intelligence that you want coaching your team long term? And I mean, that's a serious question. It's easy for me to say from the outside looking in, but Jesus Christ, when I'm getting my brains beat in and my quarterback's throwing interceptions every fucking where, at some point in time, I got to look at, I can't believe I'm saying this, Brandon Wheat and be like, you can't possibly be any worse, and maybe just putting you in will give us a spark, give us a lift. It felt like Bill O'Brien was happy that his team got to the playoffs, and he was just willing to bend over and take it up the keister from Andy fucking Reid, the walrus of all goddamn people. If Craig Stadler was a fucking NFL head coach, he would be Andy Reid, Jesus Christ, in Italy. And he got destroyed by a team that frankly, with themselves was a lot of smoke and mirrors, similar to how I think the Texans in some ways are kind of smoke and mirrors. I don't think it's got to be concerning for this Texans organization long term. And for Texans fans, it shouldn't be that surprising because Rick Smith, frankly, really isn't that good at his job. The biggest skill that he has is the fact that he's been able to keep his general managership for, 10 years now? I don't know how the fuck he's done that. I don't know how. It's astounding to me. But you look at that 2014 draft class. You have Khalil Mack on the board, a better natural fit for the defense that you run, so you take Jadeveon Clowney. Never mind the fact that Aaron Donald was also in that draft class, who, if you remember at the time, I thought was a superior prospect to Jadeveon Clowney. So, of course, they didn't take him. Imagine a defensive line with Aaron Donald and J.J. Watt playing defensive end on either side. And if you think Aaron Donald would dominate as a 3-4 defensive end, you're a fucking moron. But it goes beyond that. Other guys in that draft class, like the freaking, who else do we have in that draft class? Xavier Su'a-Filo. He's bad. Louis Nix, cut. Tom Savage, what in the hell are you ever going to get out of him? C.J. Fedorowicz, a role-playing tight end. They really didn't get a whole lot out of that draft class. I think Andre Hall, their 7th-round pick, Andre Hall, their 7th-round pick, is by far the best player out of that draft class. And I don't give a shit about these analytics nerds that are talking about, Clowney, look at how good he is in run support. One, when he's on the fucking field, which isn't nearly enough. Number two, furthermore, when you're talking about a 3-4 edge rusher that you took number 1 overall in the draft, an edge rusher, mind you, when you were talking first and foremost about his run defense, that makes my argument for me case closed. Can you see the problem there? It's not just Clowney, it's the fact that that class was largely a freaking miss. When you look at back and you say 2011, they had a huge hit with J.J. Watt. 2012 in the first round, they had a pretty nice hit now, it looks like, with Whitney Mercilus. And then 2013 in the first round, they had another really big hit in DeAndre Hopkins. You have a stretch run like that where you're hitting on these first-round picks, and all of a sudden you get the number 1 overall pick. You can't miss on that. Imagine if you hit on that. Imagine if you got Khalil Mack on the same fucking defense as J.J. Watt. And this is not me being Johnny-come-lately. This is me saying the same shit 2 years ago, that if you were going to take a defensive player and take a 3-4 outside linebacker, then by God, take the better fucking talent that's a better fit for your fucking defense. Texans fans know, or at least they should. So what are the organizational priorities this upcoming offseason? There's only 2. Number 1, now that he's 3 years through his career, you do everything you can to re-sign DeAndre Hopkins right now. You go pay that man. You pay that man. You don't risk him having another monster season or 2. All his price tag's going to do is go up and up and up. You saw enough this year to see what he can be. Lock him up long term, and lock him up now. That's priority number 1. Because once you do that, then you got to go get a quarterback. That's it. Yeah, we can talk about draft needs, and there are other draft needs. Arian Foster is probably going to be shown the door. You know, it really sucked for them once he went down with injury because they weren't the same offensively. So running back is in play for them at some point in time in the first 2 days of the draft. I think it needs to be. And frankly, I think this pretty much needs to be a draft entirely focused on offense. If they spend multiple picks on the defensive side of the ball in this draft, then it just validates once again that Rick Smith's not very good at his job. And that scouting department's not very good at their jobs either. Period. Running back is a need. A wide receiver opposite of DeAndre Hopkins is a need. You know, because that rotation of Nate Washington and Cecil Shorts wasn't very good, not consistently enough. For some reason, this team didn't want to give Jalen Strong more of an opportunity. So in the meantime, you need to find another complementary weapon out there. Maybe at pick 22, you're looking at somebody like a freaking Braxton Miller. Michael Thomas, I don't know. Maybe you wait a little later in the draft. You get a slot guy like a Leonte Carew, a Sterling Shepard, a Kenny Lawler out of California, guys like that. They need something at tight end. This isn't the Stone Ages. Bill O'Brien's concept of what to do with the tight end is stupid. You need a tight end that can actually make some goddamn plays. That's a modern NFL. It's ridiculous that they don't have one. And then in terms of offensive line help, they could use some help in the interior because, like I said, Su'a-Filo's trash. I mean, they need help at the guard position. But at the end of the day, it's all about quarterback. It's the only thing that matters. The Texans need a quarterback so bad in a bad, bad way. Now, we'll see what ends up happening in terms of the 2016 NFL Draft. And no, re-signing Brian Hoyer is not the answer, or giving him more money for a longer term is not the answer. Bringing in another free agent is not the answer. If the Texans did that and Rick Smith did that, the owner should immediately void the contract and then immediately void their existence in the organization, strip all mention of them from the Houston Texans annals like they were Chris fucking Benoit. Period. Completely whitewash them. Because there is only one need. It has to be quarterback. And frankly, if you're the Houston Texans and you fall in love with a Jared Goff or a Carson Wentz and you think those are the guys, then frankly, you have to trade multiple picks this year and even next year to go get the guy, then that's what the fuck you do. Because until you get that guy, you're never going anywhere. You cannot tell me you watch this Houston Texans team, even though they went 9-7, even though they won their division, they were in a shitty division. And you saw the truth about them in the fucking playoffs. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And that offense ain't going any goddamn where. And that team isn't going any goddamn where until they get that young franchise quarterback in the draft that they can build around. Nothing else matters. This is not a championship level team. No, sir, not even close to it. Especially not until they get that goddamn quarterback. Now, maybe they can hope that a Paxton Lynch falls to them at number 22. But we'll see if he does or not. But that leaves the ultimate speculation. Bill O'Brien was the head coach at Penn State for Christian Hackenberg's freshman year. Christian Hackenberg had a pretty good freshman year under Bill O'Brien before he went to take this Houston Texans job. When you look at Christian Hackenberg, what's happened with his draft stock the past couple of years and the performance that he had under James Franklin at Penn State, he'll be there for the Texans at 22. Might even be there for the Texans at pick number 22 of round number 2. But if you're Bill O'Brien and you love this guy, if you're Bill O'Brien, and I'm not saying he does. I'm not saying because you would tie your college program to him, knowing, again, when you talk about Bill O'Brien, he knew that he probably was going to be there very long. Anyways, he always wanted to get back to the NFL. Tying yourself to him in college is an entirely different matter than tying yourself to him at the professional level, and that's the truth of the matter. And just because he did it at the college level doesn't mean that he's going to want to tie himself to Christian Hackenberg for the next several years to come. But if he does, then the Houston Texans would be foolish if they didn't take Christian Hackenberg at number 22 overall in the 2016 NFL Draft. If that's your guy, then that's your guy. Fuck what I think, fuck what anybody else thinks, fuck what anybody in the league thinks. If that's your dude, then you take him. The truth of the matter is I would have confidence that Bill O'Brien would structure an offensive system that would actually fit Christian Hackenberg, unlike dipshit James Franklin at Penn State. Furthermore, when I look at the talent that is there with a guy like a DeAndre Hopkins, you want a guy that could be able to stretch the field with his arm strength, and Christian Hackenberg can do that. Yes, he's rough around the edges. Yes, he's a bit raw. He's a bit more raw than you would like out of a first-round quarterback prospect that came from a bigger-name school like a Penn State. But I think it's insane to be talking about the Texans taking anything other than a quarterback in round number 1. Even if you feel like you're reaching for the dude. And maybe you are. But if he's right for you, you got to do it. As much as any other team, and especially because of the situation, the Texans could sit there and get, take a freaking wide receiver in round number 1, and they could take a running back like Derrick Henry in round number 2, and people would praise it, and they'd get 2 nice playmakers, 2 long-term key cogs to the wheel, and they'll still be finishing 8-8, 9-7, 10-6 every single year, and in no way, shape, or form be close to a championship contender. Doesn't matter if their defense is the number 1 unit in the entire damn league, because they don't have that quarterback that they can win games with. You're never going to get anywhere in today's NFL playing these journeyman has-beens or never-was quarterbacks as your starter for several damn years. You want to know how far you could get? A 30-0 drubbing in the freaking wild card round of the playoffs. If Paxton Lynch is there at 22, then to me you take Paxton Lynch at number 22 because he's got more upside. He's a better prospect. But if he's gone to, let's say, St. Louis at number 15, and you're the Houston Texans, and you're sitting there at pick number 22, you must go with Christian Hackenberg. You must. Even if he flames out and busts in 3 or 4 years, so fucking what? You had the number 1 overall pick in 2014 in Jadeveon Clowney and fucking dropped the ball on that one. At least in this case, you would be gambling on the quarterback. You would be gambling on the quarterback with the huge upside. The Texans have to do it. Sorry, Texans fans. It's true. If Hackenberg's there at number 22, you know what they must do. You know what they must do.